Hey guys, it's Cass here again. Welcome to another video review. So today I'll be reviewing the Razer Mamba Tournament Edition. So this is their new refresh on the Mamba, I guess the 2015 refresh. The Tournament Edition, which is actually the wired version, and the Mamba Big Ass Box Edition, which is the wired and the wireless edition. So I think they're going really a new line with this RGB Chroma kind of theme. Also, they are implementing like a Tournament Edition version of like keyboards and mice, etc. So it feels like it's a Tournament Edition, but personally I think they're just using it as a marketing ploy to get kind of more products out. So some background, the Mamba has always been the mouse that has been like the wireless. It was famed for the initial Mamba and this 1000 hertz polling rate. However, in the new refresh with the Tournament Edition, actually, it's really basically a refresh. It's almost like a Deathadder Chroma. So I'm actually doing a lot of comparisons with the Deathadder Chroma because they are very, very similar. I think the shape, it's a little bit of a Deathadder, a little bit of the Zoe EC1 feel, and a little bit of the Imperator kind of shape. So starting with the specs, it does use the Philips Twin Eye sensor, the new refreshed version, I guess, because it says it's a 5G sensor. Goes up to 16,000 dpi, which is pretty stupid when you try to use it. So to be honest, I played around for quite a bit, played some Dota and played stuff like that, and I think Philips Twin Eye sensor, its performance is a little bit different than the Avgo laser sensors, and of course optical. Also uses arm-run switches. It says ergonomic design. And stuff like that, ultra purling hearts. So nothing too special. I think one thing on the outset that I do have to say about this mouse is that when I plugged it in, its compatibility with Synapse is a little bit annoying actually. When I first plugged it in, it did actually just stop working after maybe like a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, which is actually quite annoying. So you do have to update Synapse. If you do install Synapse, you have to update the firmware, you have to update the stuff on the mouse. So if you can use it without Synapse, but it's just something that if you buy this mouse, you have to bear in mind that you have to use Synapse to really take full function of the features on this mouse. Obviously, it comes with RGB color, a little bit more about the specs, and Teflon mouse feed. I think the biggest difference, I'll probably do more comparisons between the Tournament Edition, the Mamba, and the actual Mamba, and maybe the Mamba review. For this one, at least, I'll be doing a more comparison between the Chroma and the Tournament Edition, because effectively they're both wired mouse with a very similar shape and not really similar performance because it's very, very different in nature actually. So moving on to the price now of the Razer Mamba. I did buy it for around $90 US. So maybe if you're cheap, you can find it for $80. Expensive might be like $100, but I think $90 is probably a good price range. In terms of the price and performance compared to the Mamba and the Razer Deathadder, I think the Razer Deathadder you can probably find for $70 or $60 Chroma, the Chroma edition. So I think in terms of the value for money, I think the Chroma is definitely better. Obviously with the Mamba, you get a lot more like RGB with it, with these side colors and stuff like that. You also get like a laser sensor, which is the Philips Twin Eye sensor, which I'll talk about the performance afterwards. But in terms of the shape and the performance, I think for the value of money, I'll definitely get the Chroma. However, for the Razer Mamba, if you do prefer a Philips sensor for whatever reason, and you want an extremely high DPI, you might want to go get it. For the weight of the mouse, this is actually pretty fail on Razer's part. On the box, they actually printed it at 133 grams, which is actually pretty stupid because it's not that heavy. The Razer Mamba is actually quite a light mouse. If I check here, it's actually like it's rated 103 grams. So 103 grams is fairly light. You're not looking at like a heavy G700. You're looking at a fairly similar weight to the Deathadder Chroma actually. When you pick up the mouse, especially compared to the Mamba normal edition, the battery adds like 30 grams in itself. So you really feel the weight. For this, if you play a lot of MOBA gaming and you're like moving the mouse, swiping the mouse, it'll definitely feel light in your hands. It won't feel heavy. I mean, in terms of the size, it's slightly bulkier. I'll talk about the size and the shape right now. Just comparing the Mamba and the Deathadder Chroma, you can see it's actually quite similar, very, very similar. When you hold the mouse, I think the best way I can describe the Mamba is actually, the new Mamba, is a mix of the Deathadder and the EC1. So the EC1, if you know, or the EC series compared to the Deathadder, it's much more longer, it's a little rounder on the shape, especially the thumb rest area and the side area, it's not as pronounced. If you see the Deathadder Chroma, the thumb rest area actually goes in quite a bit. With the Razer Mamba, the thumb rest area doesn't go as quite a bit, it just slides in a little bit. Very similar to that of the EC1. And if you can see with the EC, you know, the EC1 and the Mamba, or this Mamba right here, the your index finger and your middle finger, when they slide through in the front, is actually a bit more straighter. Obviously, Razer likes to have these prominent edges, which allow you to guide your mouse, guide your fingers. I mean, for the EC1, if you remember, the sides are actually much more rounder, and they don't have this like guided edge part, which makes it for a much more rounded feeling. With the Deathadder, if you can see, you have a similar shape, but then the sides of the Razer Deathadder, they actually go out a little bit more, and they pop up a little bit more. So you can really see the difference, especially in these pictures right here, kind of how it kind of feels. So if you're looking at the Mamba in terms of a shape, you're looking at probably a mix of a Deathadder, not as prominent thumb grip and the side grip and rounded disc grip of this Deathadder, but a little bit of the EC feel as well. In terms of the measurements, it does measure 128 millimeters to 70 millimeters by 42.5 millimeters. So it's not an extremely large mouse, but it's not a small mouse as well. So if you have used the Deathadder, you have used the EC1, especially, I would probably give it a good comparison in that sense. So my hand is actually 19.5 centimeters from the tip to the base, and in terms of comfort, at least, I find it to be a very comfortable mouse. Because I actually use the EC1 at work quite a bit, so going to the Mamba was actually very similar, so I didn't feel really that much of a difference, and it was very familiar feeling, especially with going to the Deathadder now, and then I feel like, oh wow, it really is like a midpoint between the Deathadder and the EC1. So moving on to the build quality, I think the build quality, overall the build quality is okay. I wouldn't say it's extremely magnificent. If you see my unboxing for the Razer Mamba, like you saw my charging dock actually broke down. You can probably go watch that video. But in general, I think the mouse feels a little bit light. Doesn't feel extremely sturdy though. I feel like when you hold the mouse, it feels a little light, and the plastic it uses to build the ABS plastic is a little bit hollow. I feel like if I dropped it, it might just like dent quite easily, and then inside I don't feel like. But I don't know how well it's constructed in the middle, but I think I have opened it up. But to be honest, I think it's okay. I wouldn't say the build quality is extremely great, but it still looks quite nice. And to be honest, if you're not a really big proponent of really nice build quality, I always like SteelSeries. I've always liked Logitech for their kind of material that they use. With this Mamba, when you buy it, you're not expecting an extremely well built mouse. However, it does look pretty nice. I mean, that's really up to you. So moving on to the scroll wheel now. Scroll wheel, they implemented quite a different scroll wheel to that of the Deathadder. You can see the Deathadder, it's a little bit, they've always implemented a slightly like lighter scroll now, with not as prominent of a stop. This one is the exact same thing with the Mamba. It's a little bit like the Taipan one. Oh no, like the Crate 13 edition one actually. So you can actually scroll through the scroll. It's actually slightly lighter than the Deathadder Chroma scroll. Very quick. But it stops quite light, so there's no big indenture, not like the IE3, not like a lot of the Logitech scroll wheels. So that's something you should bear in mind. Other things to note before I move on to maybe the firmware and stuff like that. So in terms of the buttons, you are looking at firmware. You can program like mouse 1, my 2, my 3. Scroll wheel and these DPI buttons right here, and also the side buttons. So in terms of the firmware, I'm not going to show too much, but it is quite cool. I do like the fact that they're RGB, they're really implementing a lot of it. So you can switch between, well, this right now is the Chroma, like glowing edition. I'll just take this Deathadder Chroma to the side. The lighting, actually, you can adjust it for the lighting on the scroll wheel, lighting on the back, lighting on the side, so you can adjust the lighting on all different kinds of stuff. You can use static lighting, you can use this chroma wave lighting, you can do different lighting for different parts. So I do like the lighting settings for this, and in terms of the firmware, it's quite nice that you can set the DPI to I think out of 4 settings you can set it at increments of 1. So supposedly there is no interpolation, I don't think, with the stuff. So you could set y-axis, x-axis, you can set basically normal stuff that Razer's Synapse comes. However, I do want to criticize Synapse is that, like, as I mentioned before, when I first connected the mouse, it actually didn't work after. Maybe you use it for like 5 minutes and stop working, which is super annoying. So you have to update Synapse and update the mouse in order for it to work. And sometimes if you didn't have Synapse actually and used it with the mouse, I don't think it would save the settings. Like, I think it would just like save it as like normal green, the Razer green lighting, which is a little bit annoying. But this is kind of just like a personal preference, and we'll see if you like that or if you don't like that. Now I'm be moving on to the performance of the mouse. So this does use the Arm-on switches and also the PTE sensor, which goes up to 16,000 DPI. I mean, in terms of the performance, you can see it does. I feel like at all, polling rate is not too bad. It's quite stable, but then at the higher DPIs, it feels like they actually did use quite a lot of smoothing into it, so that it's a little bit what they call like an input lag. So when I start drawing the lines on paint, etc., I could feel a little bit of a lag. That's actually quite noticeable. It starts becoming a little bit more noticeable at higher DPIs, especially when I'm drawing it. So, but this in turn does reduce the jitter when you use it. Some people might like that, some people not as much. In terms of the acceleration, I think there is a little bit, but in general, I can't really feel it that much. But the input lag is definitely noticeable, I think, with this mouse, compared to especially when I've been using the EC1A for a long time, and also, like, for example, the Deathadder Chroma. I mean, max speeds, is perfectly fine, like 3-4 meters per second. And in general, like, if you want a mouse, if you don't really mind using laser mice, or especially like a PTE sensor, that's okay. I think I could recommend it to you. It's actually not too bad of a mouse, even though it is a little bit overpriced, especially with the RGB lighting, to be honest, which I think is slightly over redundant, but it does look very, very nice. It does still suffer from the, so PTE sensors still suffer, I think, actually, from the Z-axis. So I was testing it, and then Z-axis, like, the problem is when you lift up and down, the mouse kind of just goes away from the center of the screen, which actually doesn't happen with optical mouse. So it does still suffer from that problem, which is really a bit annoying if you're kind of gaming, and then if you do lift a mouse like really, really high up all the time. And that would affect the performance in that sense, and because your mouse, you keep having to adjusting it going up and down. So that's a little bit of a downside for the PTE sensor, but if you've used it, it's really nothing new. The new DPIs, if you do use that high of a DPI, I mean, that's great, I guess, but that's kind of like my opinion of the performance, at least, of the wired tournament edition. So in conclusion, do I think it's actually worth it? Is it a good buy for the tournament edition? Well, to be honest, you're looking at it's really, they call it a Mamba tournament edition, but it's really a Mamba shaped, it's a new shaped Deathadder Chroma. Or it's a really new shaped Deathadder, to be honest. Effectively, it's still wired. It's not a wireless mouse, so I don't know why they call it a Mamba. In terms of performance, I mean, it's the same as the old PTE sensors as seen at the Naga 2012 edition, and the new Nagas. I mean, if you want like a slightly more expensive mouse, which is RGB, great. This is like very, very colorful, very beautiful. If you're really into that, personally, I'm not as much. To be honest, if you want a better performing sensor, in my opinion, with less smoothing and maybe no acceleration, I think I'd go for the Deathadder Chroma. The shape is slightly in between the EC1 and the Deathadder Chroma. But I would personally prefer the Deathadder in terms of the price point. You're looking at price point, probably get it for like $60 or something, the Deathadder Chroma, whereas this, you're looking at $80, $90. It is a little bit more expensive. But overall, I think it's okay. It has its pros and its cons. Build quality is not that great, but it is what it is, really. So next up, I'll probably be doing the review between the Mamba, actually, the wireless edition, and doing a quick comparison between the Tournament edition and the Mamba edition. So hope you guys enjoyed that video review of the Mamba Tournament edition. If you like the video, dislike it, and make sure to check us out on itech.com, or stores on eBay, and iTech Tech, which I'll be selling mouse feet, actually for the new Mamba as well soon, and also, plug-in for the G303 as well, feet will be coming soon. So hope you guys enjoyed that video review. Thanks, guys.